Welcome. Townships are home to many black South Africans who sell their labor to employers in towns and cities. Many earn weekly wages that are then returned to the same towns over weekends when residents go shopping. In recent times, the numbers of the jobless have been increasing as jobs become scarce, leading to the government here in Gauteng focusing their energies on helping develop township businesses. Many of these businesses are informal and are not connected to any particular sectors or value chains. To tell us more is the head of department for the Gauteng Department of Economic Development, Makhukhu Mampuru, and we'll also be talking to Economist researcher who's been with the DTI's Rural and Township Industrial Development Program, and that's Mbofholowo, Tsedu. Pleasure to have you with us. And gentlemen, welcome, right?
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Mbofholowo. Give me the sense of the township economy in South Africa and the definition for that matter, because sometimes we talk about these things as if we're on the same page, and I'll be making my own assumptions, which may be wrong.
I think there's a geographic element to it in terms of the location. We're talking about places not in urban centers, sometimes far-flung, not really built up for industry, and but as you said, it's where a lot of our people actually stay.
Right. Now, when we talk about, at least from the government's point of view, Makhukhu, we're talking about what? The informal traders on the pavements, we're talking about a spaza shop, we're talking about a shebeen, we're talking about what? The mechanic on the side of the road, we're talking about the small manufacturer. What is the township economy?
We are talking about all of that and more, Brati. We are talking about the taxi driver, we're talking about the funeral parlor, we're talking about the corner shop, as well as the very superimposing malls in the townships. All of that boils down to township economy in one form or another. But of course, we're talking about participation. Who is doing what in that space? And ever since government has pronounced on this thing of township, we have seen a lot of corporate businesses going into townships because research after research shows that there's a lot of buying power lying there in the townships.
And as I alluded to it, that people go earn money every day, religiously go into the towns, the cities to work. Come Saturday, almost the entire money goes back to town. And now, in recent time, goes to the malls. So you view the malls as part of the township economy. In what way? Because it's the big brands and the established businesses that normally would be tenants at these malls.
They cannot be wished away. Of course, they have been opportunistic. Following the pronouncements of government that we need to bring those who had been excluded in the sector, they thought, okay, if they are not going to come to Sandton, would go to them in Thokoza, in Vosloorus, and in Atteridgeville, wherever they are. So the idea, the philosophy behind township economy is to ensure that our people spend where they are, and they spend on their productive capacities, not so much on what gets brought to them from other developed areas. So that's the whole underlying philosophy of township economy. It includes aspects of manufacturing, it includes aspects of entrepreneurship, it includes aspects of investment in the productive capacities of our people.
What are the typical issues, Mbofholowo, from your research regarding the township economy?
Yeah, I think access to markets, access to funding, but also differentiated funding solutions, because not everybody needs the same sort of support. So I think one of the main inhibitors is that we've packaged a lot of the things, a lot of our interventions in a way that actually excludes the people that they're meant to benefit.
But I'm imagining that one of the problems in the township economy and for township entrepreneurs is the definition of the business and the way it works. Let me use, as you say, Makhukhu, that a spaza shop, you regard it as part of the township economy. But, you know, what is it exactly? It's a small retail operation, isn't it? And the margins are very small and the sales very low. So it's a survivalist kind of business. And one could even argue that it's not sustainable, cannot create employment.
You're right, and I think that's one of the focus areas of the DTI in terms of their program, trying to focus on more value-adding sort of activities. That's what we're aiming to support, actually. Some of the small-scale manufacturing that Makhukhu mentioned, those are the sort of activities that we need to make things, and not just sell things.
So manufacturing would be one of the key areas then, I presume.
Very key that the team, just to enhance the point that Mpo is making, there's also the power in numbers. So one spaza shop on its own may not be sustainable, but put them into some kind of a buying cooperative, put community members in some sort of a consumer cooperative, put the stock first in some form of a financing or cooperative. Then you start to see something. We already have 14 such finance cooperative with a combined value of 200 million in their assets. So there are so many cooperative elements to township. Basically, I think if you exclude the element of cooperation in the definition of township, it's incomplete. So there's a lot more to it. Yes, manufacturing is quite critical because manufacturing then means people work closer to where they are because we know people spend a lot of money on transport and all of those. So they spend it there, but also if they manufacture what they use in the townships, it means some of that money which they make out there doesn't have to go back out there.
Well, when we talk manufacturing, are there particular ideas you have in mind or instances or examples that you can give?
We have a paint manufacturer in Tembisa. We have, I came across a chap the other time in my shopping and he's manufacturing pot plants, I think in the area of Mbofholowo. So we have several. We even have much bigger manufacturers. We have a steel manufacturer who happens to be a good friend of mine who works out of Gauteng. So what has happened previously, because townships were not a concern of the previous government, there had been elements of manufacturing, whether it is at Industria, at Babelego or wherever, but those had been neglected. We are beginning to take an interest in those. We are setting up those industrial hubs in such a way that what they manufacture finds a market wherever it's possible.
The problem of size remains and limited markets, right? So how are you, and you'll tell me as well, Mbofholowo, about what the DTI is doing. Let me start with the Gauteng government first. That what kind of support do you give for the small manufacturers to scale up? Because as I suggested earlier, they seem to be limited in what they can do, and the access to markets is also limited. So it's just operating at that level for years. They never really grow into other operations or employ more people.
It starts from the basics, Pratim. Basic business development support, financial management so that they don't live from hand to mouth, and scaling up to a capacity to expand beyond what they're doing. So we have for example, what's currently happening in our townships now, we call it a pitching booster. Basically, people come, they pitch their ideas, they say, this is what I had been doing. If you give me a little bit more, I can scale up a little bit. I'm a manufacturer, or I'm a mechanic, or all I need is just additional this and that. So if those ideas resonate with us, they can earn up to at least 200,000 for that. But our GEP can give loans, can give grants up to 5 million. So there are opportunities depending on the need that people present to us.
And the DTI?
I think there are a number of incentives that actually support companies upskilling themselves, new technologies, funding that companies can get new equipment so that they can be more efficient. I think in terms of the markets issue, the DTI is aggressively negotiating things like offtake agreements for suppliers. And I think what still needs to be seen is the extent to which government spending and procurement is actually trickling down to the townships as well, because then as we are buying more from these firms, they get more regular business, and that helps businesses survive as well.
But I want to identify two problems, and you tell me how we solve those. Probably there are more, but the immediate one is access to capital. Interesting, we've got numerous funding bodies, but somehow the beneficiaries or targeted beneficiaries are battling to access this funding. You tell me why that is so. Number two, the extent to which the established private sector comes to the party to help grow the smaller businesses, that the established big companies seem to be closed shop to the emerging business. I'm not sure to what extent are the different arms of government assisting or at least unlocking access to these companies for the emerging entrepreneurs. Let's talk about funding first.
I think some of the thresholds are quite restrictive for companies. You know, if you have to turn over R1 million a year, let's say, for example, you know, not everyone is keeping records of their business, firstly, and even the scale, as you're talking about, not everyone is making R1 million a year, you know, and is it worth it to go through all this trouble if all you need is 50,000 rand, maybe just to recapitalize your equipment or get some new stock, you know? So to my earlier point about we need differentiated solutions, you know, this blanket approach doesn't really work. And then I think private sector participation, I think, is on the increase. I think traditionally the banks are more comfortable with large corporate business, you know, and I guess one good thing is that the new financial charter actually forces them to direct funding towards smaller businesses. So there is that commitment even from the BBBEE legislation.
Government, on its part, Pratim, tries all manner of ways to come to the assistance of township and SMMEs. For example, from the perspective of the Gauteng provincial government, as much as 17 billion in procurement has gone to township enterprises since 2014-2015. So the initiatives are there, government is there. We tend to, I mean, other than that, we also do what we call invoice financing for SMMEs, whether they do business with government or with other entities. So in other words, we stand guarantor in the event that they need upfront payments or to purchase goods and services.
So you provide that kind. But in terms of getting the big business to the party, do you see a change that established businesses are showing an interest in township businesses?
We are continuously engaging with big business. I learned in one of our engagements with business that sometimes we tend to leave it to business to come up with ideas, and business isn't always that clued up with the needs of the public service. So I think one of the challenges that we need to take up aggressively is for us to define the role of business in the township economy, in SMMEs, and go to business to say, yes, this is what we think you can do. Come and partner with us as government.
And advice to those who are interested in joining or accessing whatever support that may be there. Any advice from you, Tsedu?
I think the information is out there on the internet. I think one of the big things that came out actually at the National Township Summit last week was that some of the government is not visible on the ground, you know. So I think that's one aspect that needs to be improved, actually, getting the information to the people. Otherwise, if you Google, you know, I think it's 2018 now, so technology must come into play. There's free Wi-Fi in the township, Sepitori, there's free Wi-Fi, you know, so people must just do a bit of research in terms of when they're developing their business ideas to see what sort of support is out there.
And Mampuru, benefits that the township economies have had, and highlight some of the successes very briefly.
I've mentioned the procurement spend. I've mentioned the banking, the financing cooperatives. I've mentioned the consumer cooperatives. We have enhanced manufacturing in townships. So it's a whole lot of them. I should say, starting from a low base in 2014 when we went to 65 townships and talked to different people, now we've got at least 10,000 township-based enterprises that are on the database of government that are able to access procurement opportunities from government. So I think we have made a bit of leeway. I think people must just take an interest in the work of government.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming around and spending time with us, and we hope that the entrepreneurs out there who did not know, or even those who do know, can now know that you for sure are determined to support and grow township businesses. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the time.
We were talking about the township economy from the perspective of the government there, but let's talk to an entrepreneur who has run the mileage over time, Jabu Stone will join us in a moment.